Welcome back to Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. I'm personal financial planner, columnist, and financial therapist Rick Kahler. Research tells us that 90% of all financial decisions are made emotionally, not logically. For nearly 4 decades, I've been helping people make better money decisions. So what makes my financial worldview different from most financial experts? I blend the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Good money decisions are not just about the money. So let's get started with today's episode. Welcome back to another edition, and we have one of our favorite guests returning with us, and that's Joan Ryan. Joan is an expert on the Enneagram, and I refer to the Enneagram a lot in the podcast and something I've been aware of, probably practicing maybe for 10 years, 10
Something like
10 to
that,
15.
probably.
Yeah. And Joan, you've been what, over 40 years?
1992. So what's that?
33
34.
years.
34. Yeah.
Or 34, yeah, that's right. We've
34 years.
turned another year. Speak a little bit more on your chapter about integrating IFS with the Enneagram, because this is kind of cutting edge modality. And speak a little bit more about how you came to do that and some of the nuances or what that's opened up for you.
It's actually really interesting, and it was not quick. I'm on a track lately of appreciating or understanding that a lot of this stuff takes time. I tend to be quite impatient, and when I understand something, I think it should flower very quickly, or it should come forward very quickly. And 34 years in the Enneagram later, I'm understanding that that's not how these things work. I got introduced to IFS in 2010, so 15, 16 years ago. And I could feel that there was an integration and that there was a resonance, let's say, is a better word, with the Enneagram. But it took a long time to really get in there. I got introduced to it in my own therapy, actually. And I was fascinated, and me being me, I went and got trained and all that stuff. That's what I do as an Enneagram 9. And it took until about 5 or 6 years ago when I met Tammy to really see where it is. So the way I would describe it now is that the Enneagram is a wonderful, wonderful map, and you can really use it to deepen your understanding of yourself and to do your inner work and to do your communicative work and relationship. But the Enneagram itself does not have any structure or models of how you do that. And IFS does. IFS is a beautiful, as you know well, and you use, I've seen you use, a really clear protocol for how you go and investigate the inside. And the Enneagram never had that. And I didn't get that that's where it connected for a while until Tammy and I started to figure it out. Because we were writing, we had to start with the hypothesis. And that's what took so long for me. But the hypothesis is this. In any individual who can identify their primary or core Enneagram pattern, type, whatever word you like, there are certain IFS-defined parts that have to be there. They can't not be. And the easiest way to understand that is to connect them to the key attributes that define that type or pattern. So every Enneagram type has, no matter what author you follow, a primary focus of attention, a primary way that they self-identify, a primary or preferred defense mechanism that they will default to. All of these are universals, but then you have priorities and preferences within them. Something that they will avoid above all else. You know, I'm a 9. Conflict is my, what's that word? The thing I hate the most, my kryptonite. You're a 1, you're going to stay away from anger with everything you have. So if you take those key attributes, you have a way to begin to look for parts that are important in your structure.
So the Enneagram can kind of highlight or shine a spotlight on potential parts that are existing somewhere in the system.
Yeah, and what we ended up doing is coming up with the idea that you can either map from your type to your parts, or you can map from the parts that you are most familiar with to your type, back to your type. But I have used it a few times to fine-tune someone's typing. So the clearest example I can give you is I do consultation groups and small classes online. And I was doing one a couple of years ago, and there was a woman who had, for a very long time, identified as an Enneagram 4. And I could feel that maybe she was in the wrong place. But I'm a narrative Enneagram teacher, so you don't tell somebody that they're in the wrong place. We just don't do that.
But you kind of intuited with her energy that she wasn't presenting a lot like a 4.
Not at all. And other people in the class or in the group could tell that. But again, we don't say, hey, you're not. But I made some suggestions. And we talked to some of her parts because we were an IFS group as well. And at one point, I think I said, those particular parts that you're identified with and that you're identifying to us are a very unusual presentation of 4. That would be my elegant way of saying something's off here. Very unusual. And she said, how so? And we talked about it. And then she went away and she talked to the parts more. And she came back to me a couple weeks later and she said, you don't think I'm a 4, do you? And I said, well, it's not my job. It's not how this works. But I do see some indications that you could investigate or you could question. And she asked me what they were, and I told her. And I don't remember right now what it was. And she went away and she did some more parts work herself. And she came back and she said, oh, isn't that interesting? Here's what I found. And what she found was parts that indicated that she actually was a 9. She did have an overlay of 4, and she had a couple of parts there that really wanted to be 4.
Mm-hmm.
But they were not the core that was underneath. And by using the Enneagram map and the inquiry, Dick's very elegant method of inquiry, we found out that that's what was underneath.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Typing yourself, starting with the parts.
Mm-hmm.
Something
or
I have.
finding a part that doesn't fit with what you think your type is or your pattern. Um, and then investigating, wait a minute, is this a core to my character structure, or however you understand Enneagram type? I like the word character structure. And then investigating. That's not something we ever had before. You know, I can question and I can facilitate, and that's how you would do it. But I could send her back to talk to those parts. And this was somebody, you know, who had pretty good facility with interviewing her own parts and with the protocols. Yeah.
And it's fascinating because there's nothing in the Enneagram world where that would be possible, right?
Uh-uh. Uh-uh. And the other thing that is so cool about integrating these systems, it's not one thing, is that there are some basic principles in both of the systems that are congruent. So, for example, if you ask Dick Schwartz, he would tell you that you never tell somebody what their parts are. The same way as Helen Palmer or David Daniels, my teachers would say, you don't tell anybody what their type is. You help them to investigate. You help them, or as you do in financial therapy, you help them to find it out on their own. That's very congruent and very important to me. There's also a number of other things. I'm not clear enough in this moment to pull it out, but there's a lot of similarity in the way that the Enneagram, the narrative Enneagram, and IFS approach therapy or counseling or coaching. And it is that the practitioner, whether they're coach or therapist or financial therapist, is not really the active agent. We're the facilitator. The active agent is the client, and that's crucially important. And I think that's probably why I was so attracted to IFS.
And that makes a lot of sense, especially with the narrative method of Enneagram exploration that you come from, right? You are facilitating the discovery.
That's right. And that's the key. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with IFS, as you said. We're facilitators, we're guides to, I sometimes tell people I help people interview themselves.
That's exactly right. And it's the same for both systems. And it's a difference in some ways. It used to be more of a difference between different Enneagram approaches and Enneagram schools. Because to be frank, there are and always have been other Enneagram schools where the teacher or the therapist or the coach was the active agent, was telling the person. I just don't happen to agree with that and walked away from that kind of Enneagram teaching, which is why I'm so wedded to the narrative. Because the underlayment in the narrative has always been, no, you don't tell someone your type. David would say, David Daniels used to say, no, we don't have a room where we nail the type into them. We don't do that.
How would somebody familiar with IFS or proficient with IFS go about using their IFS skills to help them understand their type? What would that process look like?
If they didn't know their type, I think I would suggest that they begin by mapping out their parts, particularly their managers, although the firefighters come in too. I would map out the managers with whom they're the most familiar. And everybody's going to have some that are kind of universals, like everybody has critics and everybody has people pleasers and so on. But I would look more deeply into that because the Enneagram has nothing to do with behavior. You can have the same behavior in any Enneagram type, any pattern, but it has to do with outlook and focus. In terms of the key characteristics of patterns or types, to me, the most important one is the focus of attention. What is the subject that the type prioritizes above all else? So if you know what occupies your internal view screen most, which is a hard question to answer, then you could do it. As I'm talking to you, it occurs to me that probably the easiest way, if you don't know your type, is to begin by finding your center. Are you a head center, 5, 6, 7? Are you a heart center, 2, 3, 4? Or are you a body-based center, 8, 9, 1? We have a recent innovation that makes that a lot easier to find out, which is Dan Siegel's latest work on patterns of developmental personality development. Which makes it,
remind us again of those.
Okay, so what Dan and the so-called PDP group did was they went looking for the scientific base of the Enneagram using all the narratives that have been collected for years and years. And what they came up with is that there's 3 primary motivations that all humans have. And everybody has all 3. But in almost every case, and we don't want to say every because we don't know, in almost every case, there's one that sticks out as more important in the structure. So the 3 are, if you happen to be in the heart triad, which is 2, 3, and 4, or the emotional, what we would call the emotional triad in the Enneagram, the primary motivator there is bonding or relationship. And that fits with the Enneagram profiles for those 3 types. There's other things that are in common, but bonding relationship is really the key there. In the head center group, the 5, 6, 7, the primary motivation is seeking certainty. And it doesn't have to necessarily be security or freedom from harm. It has to be certainty basically about anything. And you can see that in the patterns of 5, 6, and 7. So you got bonding and certainty. And then if you go up to the body center where you and I both sit, the primary driver there, motivator there, is Dan says agency. I sometimes use the word autonomy.
Yeah.
And it really fits. I was taught long ago to listen to the words that I choose and the words that I use. And one of my favorite things that I have always said about myself is that I'm pretty accommodating. I'm a 9 after all. And if you ask me to do something and I have the capacity to do it, I'm pretty likely to try to accommodate you. However, if you tell me what to do, or you tell me I have to, you can just forget it. That's agency. That's autonomy. I didn't know that that's what it was, but it is. And that's easier to understand than trying to explain to somebody, as we have for years in the Enneagram, well, you're focused in the energy of your heart, or you're focused in the energy of your head, or you're focused in the energy of your body. Those are all true too, but it's a lot harder to understand.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So if I want to start mapping parts, then the questions that I might want to be asking or being aware of is how important is certitude to this part, or a part that maybe
or how
there
many
is
parts are in there that really prioritize certainty?
and financially that would be security.
That's right.
And I can tie that right back to a type 6 with people that I've worked with, where
Of course.
security is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And to some degree, it can be important to all the types, but we're looking for that one where it just drops.
Well, and and the Enneagram will support this, IFS will support that definition of security, of what security is going to be really different individual to individual. But it's the idea of security. For some people, it's going to be numbers, amounts of money or amounts of investments. For other people, it's going to be defined very differently by their parts, but it's still security.
And then I think it's easy the bonding or the relationship parts that just live for the relationship.
That's right.
And that's so important. And then, of course, as you said, agency. So that's a little bit of a hint somebody can use to start sorting through and identifying parts and where they may land.
Well, and as I'm talking to you, as is normal, I clarify in dialogue. I love generative conversations. That's my latest phrase for them. And you and I have had many. And this one is similarly that. What I'm realizing is that one of the things that I've done is to take different pieces of information from different places that I've learned and apply it to situations that I know. So I've known for a long time, and I'm certainly not the only one who knows it, that separating people into their centers is a way to access beginning to find type. And this overlay of the PDP material from Siegel and others enhances that method. And then if you put IFS on top of it and you figure out why it's so important, why the agency bonding or certainty is so important to the parts, you get a lot of clarity that you don't have otherwise, along with a really nice structure to begin to investigate. And I think it's the combination of all of those things, which is why it took so long, because all of this material has been evolving in the last 30 years to get to this level. And it means that the next level could be even more exciting. You know?
Yeah, totally. Kind of in a way similar to what's been done with the Enneagram. And I think of Riso and developing the levels of every type and how things absolutely do evolve.
Well, and that theory in and of itself had a major evolution over time, because originally it was levels within the type and it was somewhat static. It was you move towards health or you move towards, and what they've now come to and what Russ Hudson teaches is very much that it's fluid and it's continuous, and that those levels are reference points in time, but they're not fixed. And that's an evolution that's really, really helpful. I used to get hysterical when I heard levels and that we're getting healthier and that's not what's important in this theory. What's important is their signposts, their cues. Oh, this is where I am today. Right now. Yeah. And I could move in 5 minutes or in a week but they're signposts. And I love that.
Yeah, it's a continuum. And how long ago was it? I think I started my training with him maybe even 9-10 years ago or so. Mm-hmm. And I remember he started drawing, well, you may be operating between level 3 and level 7 and bouncing back and forth between those. kind of depends on the day and a snapshot in time as to where you are.
Exactly. And, if overlay IFS on that, it also depends on which parts are most activated and whether a part is overwhelming or whether a part has unburdened enough to relax. And that's going to affect. So it's all congruent. It's just complicated.
It is.
Anyway.
It is. And the Enneagram has helped me in my IFS journey because as you were talking about agency or autonomy, which as a type 1 I resonate with, I can drill down on that and get to the part of me that is so afraid of chaos.
That's right.
And wants control and order. And it really helps me further identify, especially deeply buried exiles.
That's right. And you can do it slowly because the methodology that Dick gave us and continues to give us through IFS allows you to do this gradually and actually requires us to do it gradually because we have to respect the parts. And that's the other piece I love so much about IFS is that no bad parts. They all have positive intent. That's a leap in anybody's brain, but it also releases a lot of blame and a lot of lack of accountability and a lot of bad stuff that smooths the way to really understanding, oh, this is why I react this way. This is what's happening when I get activated. And I'm somebody who likes to, as I know you are, I like to understand why. So this all appeals to me. Oh, that's where that came from.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I am hopeful that this has been helpful to listeners in approaching IFS and the Enneagram and how the two really dovetail. You kind of hit on this. I was wondering what comes first, the chicken or the egg, IFS or Enneagram, and you laid that out very early that you can go about it from either angle.
Yeah.
So, where can people find you or learn more about your work?
Well, there's two places right now. I have a website, which you can put in the show notes, which is creativecollaborations.net, which has whatever I'm doing currently. I've been a little bit on hold because I have new grandson, and I'm very busy over there. I have two grandsons, actually. And this is new because my other grandchildren are in college. So it's an interesting contrast. The other place you can find me is in something called The Inner Shift, which is a new collaboration I have with Leslie Hirschberger in Cincinnati. And there's actually a retreat in February, which we're very happy to say has sold out, but there'll be more work coming in the Inner Shift work.
And that's Inner Shift dot?
I don't know, but if you put Inner Shift in my name, you'll find it.
Okay.
It's also on my website. Okay. I'm a little unprepared, Rick, today because along with the new grandson, I just moved. So I'm living among the boxes here and it's a little bit bananas.
No worries. And then there's also the new...
and the book. The book is IFS Integration, and it's published by PESI 2025, and the editor is Jenna Riemersma, who is a longtime IFS practitioner. But Excellent. Any IFS integration will get you directly there. And we actually are chapter 25, which is the very last chapter in the book. And I was upset when I first saw that until somebody told me that there are a lot of people who read the first chapter and the last chapter and leave the middle.
There you go.
So I decided that was okay.
Joan, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. You are just a wonderful treasure and a very deep well. And I appreciate
and
your wisdom.
You are a treasured resource to me, and I'm just delighted anytime I can talk to you.
Thank you so much,
good.
Joan.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me, Rick Kahler, for another episode of Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. This is where I combine the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Remember, every financial behavior, whether it appears illogical to you or others, makes perfect sense when we understand the underlying beliefs, feelings, and thoughts. Sign up for my weekly blog at financialawakenings.com. I hope you'll join me again for our next episode.